Hi, I'm Robin Waite, author of Online Business Startup, and in this video I'm going to be giving you my 5 top tips on why you need to create a great business model or strategy before you actually go ahead and build your website. So my first tip is to actually formulate your online strategy first. And what I mean by that is that a lack of planning often leads to failure. So what we want to do is create a plan or a strategy moving forward for, well, probably not just your website, but your business as well, so that we can avoid failure. Within that, what we want to create is a series of objectives, or put a series of objectives and strategies into a business plan, and these have to be reflected through the website itself. So a good example of this is one of my clients who runs a flower shop. They came into my office and they had all these grand plans for creating an e-commerce website and had all sorts of bells and whistles and widgets which they wanted to add on the website. But when we drilled down into what their business strategy was based upon, flowers are very seasonal. So you had the typical 4 seasons, plus you had things like Christmas, birthdays, funerals, and Valentine's Day. I probably shouldn't forget that one. My wife would kill me if she thought that I'd forget about Valentine's Day. But they hadn't actually built these in as features into their website. So actually thinking about and aligning your business strategy with your website strategy is really, really important. My second tip is to apply a phased approach to the creation and evolution of your website. Again, everybody wants all these magical bells and whistles, and when I finally tell them the price of how much it's going to cost, they kind of say, how much? So what we actually want to do is kind of break it down into something which is much more manageable. And typically, most businesses, to get the ball rolling, don't need all those bells and whistles. So what we do is we take a phased approach and say start with getting a brochure-style version of your website up first, then build it into an e-commerce website, and then you start to kind of create lead generation, as a layer on top of that, and start to build in your marketing strategy. What this means is that it can break the tasks up into much smaller kind of chunks, and then they start to happen in the right order. And plus, you get a sense of achievement every time you achieve one of those tasks, and something goes live on the website. You can kind of pat yourself on the back, and you're off and running. And it also ensures that the business is scalable, because what you don't want to do is spend 6 months kind of developing this massive application to then only find that half of the features your clients don't want, and you've wasted an awful lot of time and money. So getting feedback at an earlier stage from your clients is really critical to ensuring scalability within the business, because it means you can pivot sooner and drop out features which clients don't want and put in features which people do actually want. My third tip is to get online early. Google, for example, is the biggest search engine in the world. In the UK, it takes 90% plus of search engine traffic. So Google is all based upon trust. So what I suggest to my clients is, if they don't have a website already, get a holding page up immediately, because it starts to build up that level of trust within Google, and you start to build up your organic search engine page rank with Google and the other search engines as well. There are other ones who take the other 10%, but I always talk about Google when I talk about search engines. So you can actually chuck a holding page up which is nicely branded. It says who you are, what you do, what products perhaps and what services you might offer, and it allows you to actually put announcements up, so you can start to announce to people when the whole website is going to be live and what special offers you might have on. And now we've got a Twitter account and those sorts of things. So it's really important to get online early. My fourth tip is to test the marketplace before you actually launch into building this, huge behemoth of a website that you've probably got planned out in your head. I give an example. There was a software company who wanted us to build a website to launch their software with. They didn't actually have the software at the time. They were in the process of developing it. And I said, well, look, rather than building this complicated, website that's going to be explaining all of the ins and outs, and it's a whole frequently asked questions and a massive database of stuff about their software, what I suggested to them was that actually they just put an announcement, a holding page out there about their software that they were developing, drive some traffic to it, see if they could generate some registrations of interest, and say, for example, how much money people might be prepared to pay for that piece of software. What ultimately ended up happening was that they got an awful lot of traffic to their website. A lot of people said yes, they were interested in the piece of software that was being developed, but it's about 98% of people basically said that they weren't going to be prepared to pay for it. So what they ended up doing was building out a lightweight version of the software, putting it into an open source platform, having a very lightweight website as a result of it, and ran it all through GitHub. And didn't spend as much money as they were planning on. So it saved them a huge amount of money and also a huge amount of time. And it ironed out any issues that they were going to, any problems that they were going to have before they actually occurred. It allowed them to gauge the interest, and they realised that there wasn't a sufficient interest in people to pay for that piece of software. And they got some really important feedback, as in, okay, so maybe people aren't prepared to pay for it, but they were willing to contribute to it in an open source fashion. My fifth tip is build an outsourcing strategy into not just your business, but also potentially your website as well. So if you're not an expert in a specific field and there's something which you're desperate to do, then hire a professional who is an expert in that field. Their expertise is going to save you time and money, and on the face of it, it might seem like they're expensive. But on the flip side, the time that they're going to save and probably the extra value that they're going to add into that is going to speak volumes about your product and your services to your clients. So where you don't have that level of expertise, then outsource it. My sixth tip is to be prepared for change. I go into this in much more detail, or I will go into this in more detail in another video, but in terms of websites, the average life cycle of a website is about 2 to 3 years, and that's actually shortening all the time. Brand and technology is constantly moving forward, and you've got to keep up with the Joneses as best you can. So make sure that the money that you're investing now and the website that you're building is flexible enough that should you go through a rebranding process, or your products or services, product mix or service mix changes over the next 2 to 3 years, that you should be prepared that you're going to have to update your website, in a couple of years' time. So just to summarize those key points, tip number 1, make sure that you formulate an online strategy. Tip number 2, apply a phased approach to that online strategy. Tip number 3, get online as early as you possibly can. Get a landing page set up as quickly as possible. Tip number 4, test the marketplace, see if there's a market out there for your products and services. Tip number 5, build an outsourcing strategy into your overall plan. Tip number 6, do be prepared for change. You're going to have to update your website in 2 or 3 years' time. So I hope you found some useful tips in there and enjoyed the video. If you want to know more, then please visit my website, which is onlinebusinessstartup.co.uk. Or if you haven't already, then please go over to Amazon and check out my book, Online Business Startup. So thanks once again for watching the video. I hope you found some of the tips helpful. And if you've got any questions, then please do leave some comments in the boxes below the video. If you want to be informed about any future videos which I upload, then please click here to subscribe. And then finally, if you haven't already, head on over to Amazon using this button just here to buy the book, Online Business Startup. Thanks for watching. I'm Robin Waite.